we miss being at WeHub as well, but you're all very welcome in our lovely offices in Camden now. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Verity London. We've been going for nearly 17 years. Prior to that, I was a BBC TV producer, director for close to 10 years. So producing a lot of climate change and politically based documentaries, a lot of Crime Watch, a lot of Watchdog, bit of Top Gear, a little bit of Children in Need. So I did that till 2006, and work-life balance wasn't very balanced. So a colleague, Karen, and I decided to set up what was then a film production company. And for 13 years successfully ran, I would call it a lifestyle business. It was a lifestyle business. It was Karen and I, maybe we had 1 or 2 employees at any one time. We had a freelance model. So we have always worked with large and global companies. So our clients have always included brands like Microsoft and AXA and Aviva, and British Gas and sort of big companies like that. But I would say for the first 13 years of our business, we were a lifestyle business, we were a film production company, and we were going in producing all manner of content and using our BBC skills and our editorial nous, I suppose. And we got to a point where film was becoming ubiquitous. Film was being brought in-house in large companies. And actually what we were seeing globally across the businesses we were working with, the large companies, that purpose was becoming more and more on the agenda. And back then, companies were referring to it as social purpose, social impact. And when we were going in to tell our, to produce our films and to tell their stories, I suppose because editorial came from a journalistic background, we were saying, well, how does this fit in? And how actually does it fit in into the context of your wider business strategy? And what we were uncovering were brands that actually wanted to tell bigger, more powerful, more emotive stories, and through those stories be purposeful and drive positive change. And it completely resonated very well with us. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we completely rebranded. So not only did we completely rebrand to Verity London and became the strategy and communications agency for responsible business, and I will define what that means, but we also, at that point in our careers, in our working lives, in our home lives, decided we didn't want the lifestyle business anymore, and we completely changed our model for growth. And we've grown, I suppose, 8-fold in the past 4 or 5 years. Had to move out of work avenue. That's a good thing. So instead of just having freelancers, we now have an employed team. We took many of our clients with us on the journey. And we now work still with the blue chips and the global brands, very much helping them define and communicate how they drive positive change. So how a company looks after its people, how a company looks after the communities in which it operates, the environmental sustainability agenda, and governance and ethics. And so it's sustainability, it's ESG, lots of terms are interchangeable here, but we are the communications agency and provide all the creative content, design, copywriting, etc., helping companies communicate their purpose in the world.
Fabulous, thank you. That really good overview. And I think what's really interesting, or might be for many people, is making that purposeful decision to move from a lifestyle business to really grow and scale. So we'll come on to that in more detail. Thank you. Stuart, over to you. Did you want to share those slides at all? Oh, you're on mute.
Gosh, it feels like a family Christmas with that. You're on mute. Are you happy for me to share the slides? I can.
Yeah, please do.
Sure.
You just had a couple just to explain the journey, didn't you? So that's.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Can you see them?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, hello. Very honoured to be able to do this and to share my story. The story I want to get across is that move that you can make from having a passion in something to turning it into a business, and then recognizing that your business is actually something that can grow in ways you never expected it to grow. So I'm going to run through 2 slides. That's got to be the shortest presentation. It's certainly the shortest I've ever done.
It's the best one, the best type.
The best one. I want to encapsulate 34 years of work in a couple of minutes, and then give a piece of advice, not the best piece of life advice I can give, but the best piece of advice on amplifying, growing your business. So for 10 years, I was an English language teacher, working in a language school, teaching people from all over the world. Probably the happiest working time I've ever had, because the stress wasn't there. It was wonderful. My private universe was my classroom. I was teaching adults who chose to come to England to learn English, so I had nobody disrupting classes. I'm passionate about the value of language learning. I love my students. I don't mind saying I was a really, really good teacher. I got better and better. I did courses. I qualified in every way possible. I was a great teacher. I loved what happened in my classroom. In 1998, I made the move to being a businessman, a business person. And I thought what that meant was I could take what happened in my classroom and put it in a bunch of classrooms. It was only then I recognized actually there was an awful lot more to business than just your passion. And somehow we had to get students to the school. We had to keep them. We had to look after them. In our case, we had to house them. We had to check they were happy. We had to deal with international recruitment agents. I had to go to fairs from Berlin to Abu Dhabi. There was so much work involved in it that very little actually was about my passion, which was how people could learn languages. But of course, a new passion developed, which was the whole world of language schools. And over that period of time, where I was operating the business, all the grand terms come into it, but I'm going to use the word operator because that's going to come into the next slide, which is my piece of advice. Operating the business started to make a lot more sense. And so we grew to another school. And so we grew to another school and to summer camps. And literally there were at high points in our summer, which was the key bit of our market, thousands of students at any one time, hundreds of people working for us, and a consistency that ran across each school. So you could be in Dublin or you could be in London, and you'd be having the same courses with the same level of teaching, with the same qualifications, hopefully with similar outcomes in each school. In 2016, we made a change. The we being my wife and I, another passionate believer in the value of languages. And we decided to say, okay, enough from this project, but let's try and replicate it with a new project. And instead of bringing people over to England to learn English, our new project, Speak Like a Native, or SLAN as we shorten it to, is about how to help the English learn other languages. I don't think it's any embarrassment to say we're not brilliant at it in this country. I normally start a talk by asking people how good they are, and most people divide into 2 groups. Either they label themselves as good at languages and then they're with me and they'll promote it to everyone, or they say they're not good at it, but they wish they could speak a bit of Spanish. And that pretty much sums up Britain. So what we did was we started a small business that was only aimed at primary schools, the sort of after school club. We started with 1 club for 1 hour a week in a school in Finchley, in Woodside Park. And that was what we did, just to cut our teeth and learn what to do. We wanted to bring the best practice from how people learnt languages abroad to this country. Initially, only for children. Bit by bit, and I'm sure Joe will ask questions around this later of how we change some of the things, but that's what we started with, and that's what I want to look at. Things have happened. I don't know if anyone is aware, but we had this sort of pandemic that's happened. There's also been, for our business, there's been something called Brexit. These things happen and they come as challenges. And they have affected our business because our business is a face-to-face business, not very good with COVID. Our business also requires people who speak another language to teach it. Freedom of movement curtailed that in a lot of ways. But what we did was we built, because we had a lot more consciousness about it, we built a system. And then we said with a system, well, let's become a franchisor and let's replicate the system. Initially, our idea was that we would manage hubs regionally, but that looked like an awful lot of work. Why not get other people to do it? So we are now in other parts of the country. We went quite slowly with this. We took on somebody, which again is another piece of advice I give. We took on an absolute expert who built a whole franchising company and sold one. Brilliant, the best thing to do. There's nothing that we don't know about language learning or business, but franchising was new. So we went for advice and we got the best advice. We've worked very closely for a year or so with our first two franchisees, so we know everything about what they need. And now we're ready for the big growth, which is franchising across the country. Whatever your business, if you want to grow it, yes to everything, to really understanding cash flow, to having financial experts. But if you want to grow your business, it has to be something that you are able to let go of. And that means it's got to be something you can write down. If you can't put it in a manual, either because you're embarrassed about it, or you don't know how things operate, or you know there are some loose ends in there, those are all good reasons to put it in a manual and sort those out. But get it in a manual. Once it's in a manual, you can start doing things that you never imagined, like having a holiday or a break or asking somebody else to do something, because you can always point to how it should be done. And the wonderful thing about a manual is you're constantly updating it. For all the business advice, this is quite traditional. Get it in a manual. Your manual is your business and your manual is how you operate, which is why I called that first running the language schools, I called the position an operator. You are operating a business. It needs to work in every aspect, from customer service to sales to everything you're doing. If you can write it down, it exists. As a franchisor, we call it our business in a box. If someone has an idea of becoming a business person because they love the idea of, in our case, taking languages to all ages across the country, using our own unique method and using our branding, you get it all in a box. The key bit, of course, they get their t-shirts to teach in and their business cards and their leaflets and all of that. But the key bit of the business in the box is the manual, is what you do every day and how you do it to ensure consistency. And if something doesn't work, then you revise it and then revise the manual. So that's my advice, which is the reason we do it, so that other people can then operate their speak like a native business. And our first franchisee is flying. And when I speak to her, which I speak to her 3 or 4 times a week, the questions are never how do I do this? Because that's all in the manual. It's just about discussing and going through things and supporting someone in the early days of them running a business. So there are many, many things. This isn't a TED talk. There's no great revelation. If you keep things simple and you keep things in a manual, then you're able to release yourself from it. And you can still maintain your passion, but you can look from above and not from within the business. In other words, working on, not working in. So that's what we do, Speak Like a Native. I'm sure Joe's going to send on these slides. I'll stop sharing this. Come and find me, email me, find me on LinkedIn. If everything I say is interesting just from the franchising point of view, go to the BFA, British Franchise Association. They've actually got a free course you can do online that asks you a million questions to find out if you could franchise your business. But if you think that's something that you would like to do in 2 years' time with your business, contact them now. Go and have a meeting with them and start a plan. Well, how do I get there? What will I need to do? And between you and me, they'll tell you the first thing you need to have is an operations manual, because that's what you're selling. You're selling someone how to operate a business. So that's us. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm looking forward to whatever questions you fire at both of us. And that's it.
Thank you. So I've got loads of questions, because obviously this is a kind of a fireside chat, but I'm really, really happy to take questions from the floor. So please do put them in the chat. What I want to know, and I'll start with Debra and then go back to you, Stuart, is, so Debra, really as kind of, since you grew the business or decided to make Verity and Speak Like a Native a kind of a bigger, you were decided to go for that growth trajectory, how have those ideas changed or adapted since you made that kind of business decision? What did you put in place to push forward on that growth, to really drive the growth?
So it came because we really noticed a gap in the market, and we really noticed companies struggling with how do they authentically communicate how they drive positive change. So how do they avoid purpose washing, greenwashing? How do they take genuine commitments to their people, the environment, the communities in which they operate, and how do they communicate that? And how do they create great content and take people on the journey with them? We did a lot of research. We spoke to a lot of people, and I suppose what we really did was totally understand our audience and absolutely understand their pain points and their challenges. And we knew that we had solutions to ease those challenges and to ease those pain points. And we knew that we could package them into a proposition where we could partner with a large brand, and we could hold their hands and we could show them how to put a communication strategy together and then roll that out into a plan and then into the content that would begin a conversation and allow them to talk very honestly and transparently with their people, whether it's their employees, their investors, or their customers and clients. So the first thing I would absolutely say is you need to understand who you are marketing to, who is going to buy your services. And we identified the people, the job roles who would buy our services at any point. We absolutely clarified the proposition, but based it completely on very tangible outputs, what we would deliver against their pain points. So that was absolute clarity in terms of what we were going to deliver. I then got accepted onto a Goldman Sachs course, which was 10,000 small businesses. And that's amazing. Anyone should look at that. And that is for entrepreneurs who have never had business management training, literally never knew how to run a business. I made really, really good television programs. And it was, however many months worth of course, and it was phenomenal. And they're growth mentors, and they literally rocket boosted our business. Well, we rocket boosted our business, but with their help and support. And so we put in place a very solid business plan. We started hiring according to our growth plans. So we brought in a CFO, we had all our P&L forecasting, we knew when we could employ at which point. So we grew pretty quickly. We took on a non-exec director to help coach us and help us expand. And one interesting thing that happened on the Goldman Sachs course is that Karen and I had always been known as co-managing directors. And the first day I got there, the growth mentor said, "That is nonsense. I have no idea what you do. So from that point onwards, I was the CEO, and I'm in charge of strategy, I'm in charge of business development, I'm in charge of kind of that side of the business, and Karen's the COO, and it's incredibly clear. And she has, like Stuart said, she's actually worked the past couple of years putting all our operations in place, all the policies in place. We are incredibly clear who we are, what we stand for, and how we do things, kind of the Verity way. The other thing is, because we're working with companies on how they walk the talk in terms of ESG, environmental, social and governance, we were very passionate about walking the talk ourselves. So we've undergone a process where we are now B Corp certified. And I don't know if anyone on the call knows what B Corp certification is. There are now 1,000 B Corps in the UK and many more globally, but it is a movement where it's incredibly difficult to become certified. But it, once you are certified, it shows that you conduct your business against the very highest standards, socially, environmentally, communally. And it's a very rigorous process. It took us 2 years to get accreditation. We had to begin again halfway through because we grew, and so we moved up into the next bracket, which was a good thing.
Give us a small example of what that might mean, like one example of what you had to do differently that you weren't doing before to become, you know, that enabled you to become B Corp.
So the most major thing, yeah. Oh, have I lost connection, or can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
The biggest fundamental change was we changed our articles of association. So we embedded into the articles of association of our company our commitments to our people, to the environment, and to sort of social causes. So no matter whether we own the company or in future someone else owns the company, we sell or whatever, this is a company where taking those commitments to I suppose produce negate any negative impact, but produce positive impact on our people, on the environment, and in our communities. That's written into our articles of association.
And what might that look like? What does, for somebody like an employee, for example, what would that mean to somebody?
So we produce a yearly impact report, a people, purpose and planet report. It's on our website. So it means that for our people, we have a menopause policy. We have mental health first aiders. We have mental health strategies and support. We have a buddy system. We have hybrid working policies. So it's all about how we look after our people, with flexible working, etc., all the policies and initiatives that we put in place on that front. In terms of the environment, it's our targets towards net zero, and it's how we not just recycle coffee cups, it's way more than that in terms of our commitment to making the least impact possible and becoming carbon neutral and being very aware of our carbon footprint as an agency. And that's us as an agency and the suppliers that we work with. So we're incredibly careful about any suppliers or third parties that we work with and clients that we work with. So we have boundaries. There are large global clients who have come to us and we have said no, because we won't work with them because they just they're not authentic in terms of driving positive change, that, you know, they don't look after their people well enough, etc. It's not black and white. There are nuances and there are grey areas, but it's things like that. It's the percentage we give to charity. It's the charity causes. We have our own volunteering and mentoring program as part of Verity London. So it's all those things and all those elements built in that show, and we're accountable. We track and measure everything. We have data to back everything up, so that when we produce our own impact report each year, we can show how we're driving change in our own little way.
Thank you. That's really, really helpful. And Stuart, I mean, let's take it from when you decided to move to become a franchisor. Is there anything, so when you decided to become a franchisor, is there anything that's changed since you decided to kind of to move to become a franchisor, or anything you've done differently?
Yes. We still operate quite a few language groups and clubs and ourselves. And when you're doing it not as a franchisor, you can chop and change a bit, and you can say, you know, I'm just going to try this and see if this works. But now we just do everything that if we're going to do something new, our reason is, well, we're going to try it so that we can then put it in the manual and give it to our franchisees. It's not, so everything is always a reflection of how will this help them? Right. And that is a big change. And I'll echo something that Debra said, which is, whatever your business, there's likely to be some kind of a professional body behind it somewhere. And they have grown with the experience that you should be looking at. It's not about your product or service, but about mainly it's your dealings with people, it's compliance, it's so many of the things that Deborah's touched on. So we made it an aim, and we ended up being the newest company to be accepted into the British Franchise Association. Normally it takes 2 to 3 years, and we got in after 1 year. And our reason for that was because we made the best decision. I think we had, I can beat Debra, I think we had 3 CEOs or managing directors, because we were so undefined in what we did. And then we split up into different roles, and we took on the key bit, which is taking on a non-exec, who was someone who'd built, I mentioned it, over 20 years, he built a massive swimming franchise. And so he was able, it just makes, we could either learn over 10 years, or we could fast track with somebody else's experience. And so that's very much the key for us. I can't remember if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Thank you. So can I just ask, I mean, obviously, I think it was you, Stuart, sorry, who said, I mean, we have been through, yeah, it was you, Stuart, who said, I mean, we have been through unbelievable change in the country over the last, well, since Brexit. So let's say 2016, you know, Brexit, COVID, and now, you know, kind of high economic uncertainty. You know, what do you think is the biggest challenge you've faced whilst running your business, and what are you trying to grapple with now? Debra, let's start with you on that.
So I would say we were ahead of the curve when it comes to sustainability and responsible business. And what that meant was, during COVID and Brexit and the Ukraine war and everything else, companies have woken up to the fact that they do actually have to engage with a positive change agenda. Companies, however big or small, cannot hide their heads in the sand anymore. And any given organization does have to understand the impact that it makes on its people and on the environment and societally. And it also has to understand the societal issues and the environmental issues that are going, it's called double materiality. And as companies woke up during COVID to the fact that even in its very narrowest sense, they just had to look after their people. You know, everybody was working from home, people were in all sorts of different situations, and companies were thinking, oh my God, you know, how do I communicate this? And there was a lot of overwhelm and a lot of panic comms that were going out. And I suppose a silver lining out of a very, very terrible pandemic, which affected me personally, but a very terrible pandemic was for our business, that companies were suddenly waking up and they wanted to engage, but they didn't know how to communicate. And where our skill lies is in that global cascade of communications, and how do you do it empathetically and sensitively and transparently, and how do you take people with you, and how actually do you start putting a roadmap in that shows that you've got commitments in place, there are goals in place. This is not just you're promising X, Y, and Z, but actually you're embedding it into the core of your strategy, and you're communicating it, and so it's becoming, you know, within the DNA of your business. It's just how you operate, and it aligns with your values and your mission and your vision. And so I suppose the challenges that came with COVID and Brexit have played into I suppose, more of our strengths, that we can help companies leverage that. And even companies are grappling with their ESG agendas and how they communicate it as we're moving forward with the cost of living crisis, as we're moving forward with environmental crisis, and the landscape as it is. Our challenge now is to be able to help companies keep ESG very high up on the agenda, and to prove the business case. So we've worked very, very hard over the last few years. Businesses should unashamedly make profits. Let's just put that out there. Businesses need to make money, and they absolutely unashamedly should make profits. And if you are driving an authentic, evidenced, transparent ESG agenda, then it should feed back into your bottom line, because you will be able to attract better talent, you will be able to retain talent, you will be able to keep your employees happy and motivated and involved. When your clients procure you, when you're looking for new clients, more and more large companies are being asked to show their environmental and social credentials, and you'll be able to articulate that incredibly clearly. You'll be able to differentiate your offering because you will make decisions through the lens of sustainability. And so it's developing more and more the business case for ESG, and that and the challenge is then to show our clients how they can ensure their boards are prioritizing ESG and very much keeping it on the agenda and moving things forward, even within the current economic situation.
Thank you. And Stuart, what are you trying to grapple with right now?
I think anyone who's been in business for a few years will have their list of things that they've grappled with, because you can do all your SWOT analysis and all your planning, but sometimes external things that you can't even predict are going to happen. I recall in our language school days, we had our biggest ever Easter about to happen, with school groups coming from all over the world. And then there was a terrorist incident in London, and every single parent said, the incident has happened, but I'm still not going to send my child. What can you do? You can't get on the phone and guarantee to a parent their child's safety. And so things happen. The pandemic was an enormous blow to us, because our choice was, as a business, was to say our selling point is face-to-face learning. Something in languages that's particularly important, and apps are very popular in Britain for language learning, incredibly popular in Britain, because they suit a sort of general personality trait, which is I'll learn everything in private and hopefully never have to open my mouth and fear making a mistake. And we're that bit where you have to have a go. But suddenly we couldn't. There was nowhere we could go and no one who would come there. So we moved to videos and we moved to Zoom, and we decided to say, as a business, as a person in a business, if I close down the business today, my mission will disappear because that belongs to the business. The vision will, but my values won't, because my values are what I expect to have and what I expect my employees to have and my customers to value, that we have those values. So we decided we love language learning. Let's go out there and help. Eva, and I agree with Debra, profit is important, but there are times when that profit might come further down the line because you are living your values. So I knew that in primary schools, and if anyone was involved in home teaching their children and how challenging that was, and this is British Council in the last year's report, 60 to 70% of primary schools stopped language teaching during the pandemic, mainly because those schools don't have any language teachers and they rely on weird ways of teaching languages anyway. So we said, well, let's step in, let's help them. So we created wonderful materials for schools. We got it out there. We got hundreds of new schools interested in what we were doing, who were delighted to have stuff they could send on. They became our new friends for the future. So the profit is not always an immediate thing, but we live by our values, and that's what we do. Again, with Brexit has been a problem, not for us with our customers, but with our teaching staff, because there are, I mean, as we remember, only a few years ago, every Costa was full of young Spanish people who are coming over here for a year or two. Well, we pay them 3 times what they get in Costa, and they come and work for us, and that's great, but they don't exist anymore. So we've had to shift to a different kind of person. We shift to attending recruitment fairs at universities and things like that. Not the end of the world, but maybe my one thing I'd say is, if you're going to go into business and not be an employee, but be the employer and be the person running the business, things will happen. Maybe not as big as a pandemic, or maybe bigger, I don't know, but things will happen. Simple as that.
Josh, I don't know what your last name is, if you could let me know, because it's useful to know who's Josh is. But he said, what would you do differently? So Deborah, anything you would do differently?
I think there's been massive learnings along the way. I don't think you ever stop learning, and I think doing that Goldman Sachs course, I mean, really showed me what I didn't know. And I'm still aware of things I don't know, but I think what I've learned is I would bring in more expertise earlier to support me, and I would have a mentor or a coach. I would have definitely brought that person in much earlier. I was just going to pick up on 2 just very practical, tangible challenges we've been discussing recently, which may or may not be of interest. The first is we were just, because everything's on Zoom and there's meetings going on, our diaries at work were so rammed. We got to the point where, for mental health reasons, we've now written a policy that there has to be a certain amount of breaks in any given day, and certain things can't be scheduled at certain times. So that's just something we've now, come upon and written a particular policy about. So that was a challenge, because everyone was just burning out, and we didn't have time to think in between meetings. Just very practical, on a practical note. And the other thing is a challenge we have seen recently, which we are now squashing and overcoming, is it's very easy when you go and see a potential new client for them to say, well, can you write a proposal for us? And then we were spending ages writing proposals, which some would convert and some won't. And we have now overcome that challenge by building an extra step of asking a client to write a brief for us, or do something where they have to show commitment by investing their time from their side. And what we're now beginning to see is we're wheedling out the time wasters. So no, our time is too precious. We will not just write a proposal willy-nilly, but if they're prepared to bring in their CEO, or if they're prepared to bring, there are a couple of things that on our checklist we ask for, then we know they're more serious, and then we know it could go to commission. So then we write them a proposal.
I think that's a really good point. And even if it means, and it's not so big as writing a brief or a proposal, if you get that potential client to send an email kind of outlining the steps that you're looking for, even if we take it down, I think that's a really nice idea, Deborah. Thank you.
Can I add one? There can be a competition in business places that you're sending your email to other people later than somebody else, and to show how hard you're working and how late. And we made a decision that no emails sent between us at work should ever be sent after 6. Finished. You don't have to show off. We'll all get our work done.
Yeah, good point. And was Josh said, what did you do? What would you do differently, if anything?
I'd have become a drummer and just followed my rock and roll dreams. And I have to say, in my slides, the first thing I showed was my classroom when I was a teacher. and I thought I was the expert. And I was in my classroom. And then I discovered so many areas of expertise. I would never consider doing my own accountancy. I would go to an accountant. I'm not going to write my own contracts. I'll go to a lawyer. But other than that, within business, so many of us think we can answer everything, and it's so much quicker and so much easier to go to someone who already has that expertise, put the trust in them. And as someone overseeing a company, that's your job, is to keep finding the people who know what they're doing. You don't have to be the expert yourself. And that can fast track you.
Thank you. And Gitty asked, would you bring a coach in at the start of a new smallish business? She's a chocolate wine retail gift store.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is benefit to having a mentor who's kind of been there, done it, can give you, give you ideas. Yeah, I would. I don't think it matters what size you are. I mean, obviously, as you get bigger, we're obviously paying now to have a non-exec, but and I've done other. There's also, I will introduce the idea of peer groups and peer networking. So after I did the Goldman Sachs course, I had the opportunity, I can't remember who it was with now, to be part of peer networking, which is a very specific way of coming together as part of quite an exclusive group, maybe 4 to 6 people from different industries, but sort of the same size as your business. And you bring an agenda each time, maybe you meet once a month. But you bring an agenda, and it's run in quite a specific way, these groups, but you're allowed to bring an issue or a challenge to the table, and then you hear other people's views or how they might have had something similar, and yeah, so a coach, a mentor is really useful, but setting up your own sort of peer networking group where you can just dip in once a quarter or once a month can also be really helpful.
I'm really pleased you mentioned that. And Hadassah, you've said it, because we work at Work Avenue, we do that once a month. We have a group called the Sounding Board, and we discuss a different issue once a month. It is in person. So I don't know, Gitty, if you're in London, but if you are in London, first Thursday of every month, we have the Sounding Board. In fact, this Thursday was the first Thursday of every month. Next week, we're having just as a networking, so anybody who wants to do some networking and schmoozing with some donuts, we're going to be doing that. But normally it is sitting around the table, picking one issue, sales or staffing or whatever, and we will discuss that issue. So that peer-to-peer, and obviously, we here at Work Avenue can give, if you don't want to pay for a mentor, we obviously do one-to-one free of charge business advice, so we can kind of keep you accountable. I'm a bit aware of the time. I do want to ask, because I know that one issue keeps coming back, and it's useful to get it from your perspective as a bigger business, but we get all the time as business owners, or still small business owners. What advice can you give about finding new customers or clients? It's one of those real challenges. So I guess for you, Stuart, it might be new franchisees, but how do you go about finding new clients? Debra, do you want to kickstart? Sorry, Stuart.
No, I thought you said my name. No, Debra, after you.
So you can't go about it in any one way, and you have to find what works for your business. So we do a number of things. We've never done cold calling, hate cold calling, don't like it. So we warm people up. So we run free webinars, we run free workshops, we run sector-specific workshops, have all sorts of sector-specific breakfasts and events, and I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to follow me on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. And a couple of times a year, we produce a report or some thought leadership, a specific sort of white paper. And what it means is that by the time we sort of touch people or reach out to people, they've heard of Verity London. Normally they follow me, or I'm connected to them on LinkedIn. They might have been to 1 or 2 webinars. We also track the living daylights out of everything. We've got the most amazing CRM system, so we can see when people are interested, when they've gone onto our website, when they've connected, when they've emailed. We can Yeah, it's a bit Big Brother, but it's fantastic. And it means that when we start conversations with people and with companies, they are warm to us, they know us, and we go in with intel. So we understand where they're at currently when it comes to their sustainability strategy. And then we can see where the gaps are. So we go in intelligently. We are experts in certain sectors, so travel and tourism, financial services, legal and tech, as well as the charity sector. And so we build and we network very much within those sectors. We write for the trade press in those sectors. We go to events where we know those people will be. And so it's a multi-pronged approach, but the way we do it, it's a warm approach.
Thank you. And Stuart, what about you?
As you say, there's more than one avenue for us to go down, because there's more than one customer. If it's about recruiting new franchisees, then it's, well, I'll go back one step and say, but before looking for new customers, you've got to concentrate on retaining your existing ones, because your existing ones are the most important customers you'll ever have, because they're going to recommend the next lot. And it's not just sort of woolly organic growth. It actually is the truth. And so if you're doing everything, if you're losing customers, there's no point chasing new ones, because you're doing something wrong at a different part of the funnel. If you're retaining your customers, they're going to want to be ambassadors for you, either locally or on a grander scale. For us, a customer can come from different avenues. So if we're looking for a new franchisee, it may well be somebody who is teaching for us at the moment, who loves what we do and would like to move from teaching one class to employing other people to teach. So it's all about constantly talking to people. And as Debra says, lots of LinkedIn and lots of social media. Giveaways are great as long as they are of value. So we produce books that we give to people. We also, we're on a big drive to recruit nurseries. That's a big market for us. We've got no sales talk. There doesn't need to be a sales talk. We just say, can you give us an hour? We'll come in and do a free taster for you. And we're on about a 95% hit rate, that when they say yes, they love what it is. If they can afford it, if the money works for them, and that's their decision, but they like what we do it. So there's no point just trying to negotiate. Warm is a very good description.
So look, we've come to the end. I can't believe it. I had so many more questions to ask you, and you've been so generous with your time and sharing your story, and an absolutely fabulous end to today's Enterprise Expo conference. Thank you so, both Debra and Stuart, thank you very, very much. Really Pleasure. Interesting Pleasure. Stories, and good luck with the next. We look forward to following. Please follow them or connect with them on LinkedIn so you can see what they're doing. Just to plug a little bit of what Work Avenue are doing next. As I say, next Thursday, if you can, please come to the Sounding Board donut event, and then on Tuesday we've got the negotiation and pricing workshop and setting business goals, which I mentioned right at the beginning, on the 15th of December, so that you can set some goals. As I say, think about where you want to be by December 23. So thank you very, very much to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you very, very much to everybody. Much, much appreciated.
Thanks.